This all happened when I was 8 or 9. I can't remember exactly when, but it was around the time when Halo 3 came out. The first time it happened was honestly the worst. I was homesick from school. In reality, I just wanted to play Halo, but everyone in the house worked, so I was alone, and my uncle was at school. The only Xbox in the house was in the basement, so naturally, when everyone left, I got up and went to go play Halo. I'm down there for a few hours playing the game happily when, all of a sudden, the storage room door creaks open ever so slightly. Not completely, just enough to see a slit of darkness, and, plain as day, I hear my mom call me from what sounded like the furthest corner of the storage room, saying she needed help putting something away. My mom wasn't home at the time, and I knew this. I didn't turn anything off. I bolted upstairs and laid on the couch until my uncle got home from school. He asked why I left the Xbox on and laughed at me because I was supposed to be sick. I just laughed back and said, "My bad, won't happen again." The only other time this happened was actually during a family dinner. We had cousins and pretty much our entire family over for a holiday. My cousins and I were playing with Nerf guns in the living room. They got hungry and went to go get some food, so I sat by myself in the living room, reloading my magazines with darts, when something caught my eye from upstairs. It was my mom's bedroom door. It had opened, and because it was like 8 p.m., it was dark upstairs. No one was up there, so no lights were on, but my mom had walked out from the darkness and kind of waved me over with a weird smile on her face. I yelled to her, "Why?" and she just kept waving me over. I clearly saw that it was my mom, so I didn't question her again and started walking over, but as I got to the start of the stairs, I looked to my right and saw my mom talking with my aunt at the dinner table. I walked over and asked if she had been upstairs, and she said no. Went back to the living room, looked up the stairs, and her door was closed. Nothing like that ever happened again, but it still gives me the chills when I think about it. This happened a couple of months ago, and my friend and I are still perplexed about it. My friend visited me in my apartment complex. There's 2 elevators that are next to each other. As we're entering the building, making our way to my apartment, and walking towards the elevators, we see a person just entering the left one and the door closing behind them. My friend presses the up button, and naturally, we expect the right elevator to open because we just missed the other one. However, after a short moment, the left elevator opens again, and it's empty. We both looked at each other in confusion because we clearly saw someone entering it. We had no explanation as to where this person suddenly disappeared to. We even tested how long it would take for the elevator to go to the second floor and come back. It took 40 seconds. That was the fastest possible time, and we're both absolutely certain that when it happened, the door wasn't closed for more than 3 to 4 seconds. What do you think? A glitch, a ghost, or is there a logical explanation? I had just gotten out of the shower and was walking back to my bedroom to get ready for work. I was wearing only a towel around my waist. As I'm heading back to my room, I passed by the stairs. Our stairs were those kinds that go up halfway to a landing and go back up to the second floor in the opposite direction. As I'm walking back to my room, I can see, out of the corner of my eye, someone standing on that landing. The instant I notice them in my peripheral vision, I hear them call out, "Graham," my name. It was clear as a bell and quite loud. I answer, "Yeah man, just a sec, alright?" I never looked directly at the person because I knew exactly who it was. It was my roommate. It was 100% his voice, and from what I saw out of the corner of my eye, it was him, no doubt. I enter my room, drop the towel, and grab a pair of boxers that were on the end of my bed. I whip them on and poke my head out of the door and notice that he's not standing on the landing anymore. I say, "Yeah man, what's up?" No response. Dead silence in the house. I step out of my room and lean over the banister to call out loudly, "Yeah, Tom, what do you need?" I pause. Nothing. Irritated now, I hurriedly walk down the stairs and peek into the living room. It's silent. TV off. I make my way to the front window and look out to the street. His truck is not out front. I make my way to the garage and peer out the window into the back driveway. No truck. I trudge back up to my bedroom, utterly confused, and find my phone. I call him. "Hey man, where are you at?" "I'm at work, duh," he says. It was around 7 o'clock in the morning, and he worked in downtown Dallas at a golf course. We lived in Carrollton, Texas, and we were the only 2 people staying in this house at the time. "Okay, never mind," I said. He responded with an irritated and confused, not to mention mocking, "Okay." I hung up. All day long, I was extremely creeped out. I had this eerie feeling that absolutely would not leave me. No matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried to focus on something else, I absolutely could not shake that creepy, bizarre, and extremely eerie feeling. He never asked me what that call was all about. I honestly think he probably forgot about it. I did, however, tell him all about it years later. He told me he wished that I had never told him that. I completely understand that, since if our roles were reversed, I wouldn't want to know either. This happened when I was living in an apartment I had just moved into. My room was set up so I had a window next to my bed. I have a lot of stuff on the windowsill. I had just gotten into bed and had fallen asleep. This is when I had my first ever sleep paralysis experience. I have never had sleep paralysis before, so this was very out of the ordinary. The sleep paralysis started off with a shadow person coming in by opening my window. He knocked some things over and went out of view. I couldn't move or even close my eyes. I heard some doors opening and some things moving around. He went out of my window and looked directly at me as he closed it. I sat up in my bed in a cold sweat and looked at my windowsill. Everything the shadow figure had knocked over was actually knocked over. I looked around the rest of the apartment and nothing was missing, but some things were knocked over and cabinets were left open. I have a music box in my room that my mom had given to me before I moved away. One night I wake up to the music box going off all by itself. It was so creepy. Other than that, nothing else has happened, and it's been about a month since the music box. I don't know how to explain this. Okay, if you've ever lived on your own before, you know how freaky this one is. Even if you take the shadow person out of the mix, seeing your apartment completely different from the way you left it, especially if you live alone, just fuck that. I'd be out of there the next day. This occurred about 3 years ago. I had a position as a buyer, and as such, would receive tons of cold calls and emails from people trying to get our company to try their products for resale. Also important, our company had a digital phone system. There was one central number, and it followed a phone tree to multiple offices via internet connection. Voicemails were available on our big office phones, but the recording would also be sent to our emails. So one day I received a voicemail from a phone number I recognized as someone who had been attempting to get a hold of me to sell me their products. Oddly, the voicemail was something like 15 minutes long. Curious, I began to listen to it. The message begins with just static and the sound of rustling. Seems like a classic butt dial, or maybe they forgot to hang up when the voicemail clicked on. I fast forward through the message just to see if anything was ever heard, and yes. Suddenly, there was a clear voice. They're having a one-sided conversation. I think, oh, these can be fun sometimes. Except the one-sided conversation is clearly with me. The person on the phone is referencing my then-recent maternity leave, our company by name, and a few other pretty identifying details that currently escape me. They'd stop speaking and there would be a blank air, and then they'd answer a pertinent question that I would have asked in that kind of a conversation. Clearly speaking to me, but I never spoke to this company or this person. I did receive additional emails from them later that were clearly initial attempts at communication and not a follow-up to a conversation. I checked with coworkers in case somehow, somewhere their conversation got picked up in my voicemail, and nope. Coworkers and husband were equally confounded, but with zero explanation, we just all had to move on. This happened to me in 2018. To preface this story, I've always been someone who experiences vivid dreams. Sometimes my dreams are so realistic that they leave me feeling restless when I wake up. I always chalked it up to my mental health or the medication that I take for it, but I had a dream in 2018 that stuck with me for a really specific reason. So I was living with my mom at the time. She's been a single parent since my dad died when I was a kid, so life hasn't been easy for us. When we experienced a bout of homelessness in 2012, my papa, grandfather, allowed us to stay at his place until we got back on our feet. The house he stayed in has an intense emotional bond with me and my family. My mom and her brothers grew up there, and so did my elder sister and I. The house itself appears in my dreams a lot. I'm not sure if it's some sort of symbolism or what, but to cut to the chase, I had a strong emotional bond with my papa. He was a man of little words like myself, so I found it easy to get along with him. He was always there for us as the patriarch of the entire family, always generous and loving in his own silent ways. So, about the dream. I don't remember it play by play since it's been years, but I do remember being in a hospital with my mom. She was beside me at my papa's bedside as he lay. My mom looked at me and said something like, "You need to say your final goodbyes to Papa. He's not gonna make it." And I am not kidding you, at that exact moment, my door in real life opened, and my mom came in to wake me, telling me that my papa was in the hospital with pneumonia. And he died. Like, a week later, he died. We visited him a few times. Me and my mom were both faced with the reality that he wasn't going to make it. Though he was alive and hooked up to machines, I only really saw him semi-conscious one time after that. I think we talked. I don't even remember about what, but that was it. I'm a skeptic and an agnostic, but I can't deny how weird it is that I had a premonition in my dreams about the death of a close loved one. I've been struggling with mourning him ever since. It's been almost 5 years, and I still can't believe he's gone. He was such a constant in my life, the only father figure I had. I told my mom about the dream years later, in 2021, and she's convinced it was a coincidence. Which, sure, in all likelihoods it could be, but it's just so specific. Maybe it was his way of preparing me for that reality I was about to experience. Who knows? Sometimes I don't know whether to feel freaked out by these experiences or like a bit comforted. Premonitory dreams like these seem to sort of serve the purpose of like helping the person cope with what's about to happen. So I don't know, to me, that's a bit more uplifting than anything. This story happened a few years ago. The setting is my grandparents' house, late at night on Christmas Eve, as I usually go there with my family for Christmas. Now, I couldn't sleep that night for whatever reason. I brought my computer on the trip to watch videos. While on my computer, out of the corner of my eye, I see movement. It's a person, one of my siblings, I thought. I look over and we make eye contact. Once this happens, the thing proceeds to walk over to one of the walls in my grandparents' living room containing a photograph of my grandmother and my mom together. The creature touches the painting, and then the creature walks through the wall and disappears. I'm shaking, not quite crying, but almost. I shut off my computer and decided to go to sleep on the couch in the living room. I do eventually fall asleep and wake up. First thing I notice is that the photograph is completely gone. I asked my grandparents where they put the photograph at, and they looked confused. I pointed to the spot on the wall, and they looked stumped. They then told me that the photograph I had said was there was never there, and they never took such a photo. Still freaks me out to think about today. So when I was much younger, probably around 11 or 12, I spent a lot of my time playing outside with the neighborhood kids on my street. One day, my parents were in the kitchen getting dinner ready while I played football with my friends outside in the yard. My parents apparently saw me walk in through the garage, walk through the kitchen, and walk upstairs to my room. Normal, right? A few minutes had passed, and they heard the garage door open, then saw me walk inside the house and head upstairs to my room. They both saw this happen. They stopped me while I was on the stairs and asked, "Who just walked upstairs?" Thinking that maybe it was someone else, maybe a friend of mine who had previously walked up to my room and they just thought it was me. Confused and a little concerned by their demeanor, I said, no one? My parents told me then and there what they just saw happen, and from the way that they describe it, they saw the exact same scene 2 times. They heard the garage door close behind me as I walked past the kitchen and walked upstairs. Everything down to the body language, copy and paste, as if someone rewinded time and they rewatched my entry to the house. This would be insanely odd if even just one person were to see this, but both of my parents watched this happen. And even to this day, when I bring it up on days I see them, their stories match up perfectly. It really did seem to rattle them that day. It is something that has totally stumped us, and we have zero explanation for this insanely bizarre occurrence. This was when I was 19 or 20, and I'm 31 now. My house only had 2 floors, the main floor and the very open, unfinished basement. My best friend C was with me while my parents went on a date. She and I were in my basement playing Wii Baseball, being our loud and crazy selves. We had a good game going, and throughout the evening, we were hearing noises on the floor above us. They got louder and louder, slowly, so that we'd notice but would just quickly dismiss them. My house was fairly creaky, especially when you were in the basement. You could definitely tell where people were by hearing their footsteps. Eventually, she and I grabbed each other as we knew there were 2 sets of footfalls stomping around right above our heads. We had gotten extremely quiet, expecting my parents to call out to us. They never did. There were no voices, just the circling footfalls. Someone apparently had broken in, we thought. I grabbed a broken pole for a weapon, and C prepared her phone to call the cops. We went upstairs and searched everywhere, and I mean everywhere. Closets, under beds, cabinets, the oven, locked garage, you name it. All windows were locked and both doors were secured. My parents weren't even close to being home. We just went back downstairs and played quieter, but we were both very unnerved, our eyes darting periodically towards the ceiling. These events have happened over the past few months. My grandmother committed suicide in May 2022, and it's been very difficult for me and my family. We were very close, and I guess you could say me and my grandmother were best friends. As one is when they lose someone in such a way, I became very depressed and my mental health began to deteriorate. One of the ways I learned to cope was watching series we'd watch together and bringing some of her favorite personal items to my house. One specific night, I was watching Bohemian Rhapsody 2018 as it was a movie she loved. I live right in front of the woods, and it's not uncommon for things like raccoons or even sometimes foxes to come onto our deck to try and eat the grease from the grill at night. I heard something tapping on the glass door, but I ignored it at first, thinking it might have just been the wind or something. This happened 3 more times before I turned to actually look out the window. It was my grandma. I swear to God, I've never screamed so loud in my life. I ran to my mom's room and tried to frantically explain what I saw. She made my dad go see if anyone was out there, but there wasn't. He told me to go to bed, and that was that. I really do believe that this wasn't some weird coincidence. I know what I saw. My mom told me this story many years ago now. She's getting older and a little loopy, but this was way before any of that. About how she swears her and a few other girls, including my aunt, learned to fly in the basement of her old house. She told me this very sheepishly, probably expecting me to ridicule her. It was the way she approached it and told me, and her apprehension to even mentioning it, that seemed to make it all the more true. She said that her and her friends could fly, I'd use the word levitate, for small amounts of time in her house's basement. She said they never told or showed anyone because they were worried that would make it stop working. She lived there for a few months before moving into a new house and said that it never worked anywhere else besides that basement. She described the basement in detail and how she could clearly remember floating up to see dust on top of cabinets and things that were too tall to have seen as a kid. She said some of her friends were better at it than others, but that they all could eventually make it work to some degree. As she was telling me this, I had that extreme deja vu feeling, like I was remembering edges of a forgotten dream. I didn't necessarily feel like I had those memories or could do it myself, but just a really weird feeling that I knew all along my mom could levitate when she was a kid. I never really brought it up again, and of course, I didn't make fun of her for it. I believe all kinds of crazy shit is possible, and I was thankful she felt like sharing that with me. Any thoughts on this? Anybody else have similar experiences? After looking into this story a bit more, I realized that this particular memory is actually very common amongst people. Lots of people seem to have very similar memories. Specifically though, they seem to be a little bit different than this. They seem to be a memory of them like floating down the stairs as a child. After browsing around Reddit, I found a lot of people talking about this dream regarding the stairs and just being able to fly around as a child. It's very interesting that so many different people seem to have experienced this. Why do you think so many people seem to have such similar memories? I definitely want to hear some possible explanations in the comments. All my life, I've been followed by a black and white dog. I'm always with someone when I see it. Either I see it as black and they see it as white, or vice versa. It disappears in plain sight. No shit, it vanishes in thin air, and I'm never alone when I see it. It's very scrawny and bony looking, but very tall and walks more like a deer than a dog. It sounds weird to say, but the way it places its legs when it's walking is more deer or goat-like than canine-like. Once I saw it while I was hunting. When I tried to shoot it, my gun clicked into safety mode. These experiences continued to get more unnerving as the last time I heard it, I was inside my house, and I believe it was inside my house with me. I'm thankful my family knows I'm not crazy because they've seen the same fucking thing. Even a cop saw it with me when I was walking back home. He walked up to it with his gun drawn, and again, it just vanished in plain sight. Is this common? I can't find anyone else who's had something similar happen to them. Today, me and my friends went to Carl's Jr. after school for some food. Me and my friends are 16 to 17, by the way. This isn't a childhood story, technically. And I needed to use the bathroom. So after we all ordered, I went to the bathroom and did my business, and when I first walked into the small bathroom with 2 stalls, a lady who was washing her hands complimented my shoes. I said thanks, and she left the bathroom after that. When I exited the bathrooms and walked over to where my friends sat, I mentioned the lady and the compliment she gave me. I was wearing some wacky shoes, so they were notable. They all proceeded to say that no one left the bathrooms. There was no one else in the restaurant at the time, and this lady had a pink shirt on and was not an employee. One of my friends gets up and goes to the bathroom to check for the woman, to no avail. I then get up to investigate for myself and walk into the bathroom again and look around. I couldn't have spent more than a minute in there, and I didn't notice anything amiss. I walk over to my friends, and they ask what took me so long. Apparently, I was gone for 10 minutes. I get confused and say that I only spent a minute in the bathroom looking for that woman, and all my friends proceeded to get more confused and tell me that I didn't tell them about a woman of any sort. At first, I thought they were joking. I told them to quit it and to give it to me straight. They then gave evidence for me spending 10 minutes in the bathroom, and they kept to their story. Even many hours later now, they haven't caved, which is either a very impressive bit or they're telling the truth. I believe the latter because my friends know very well that I got distressed over this, and one of my friends started doing their own research into what was happening too. None of my friends are good at lying either. They have huge tells and crack after little effort. Needless to say, the entire situation was odd, and I'm not entirely sure what happened. The lady disappeared, my friends acted entirely differently, and I lost time. Once, when I was a kid, like maybe 6 or 7 years old, I randomly woke up in the middle of the night. I noticed who I thought was my dad open the door, look into my room, and then close it again and leave. I was a bit confused, so I decided I was going to ask my dad about it in the morning. So the next morning, I asked him why he came into my room last night. But as it turns out, he didn't. He never entered my room that night. However, his cousin, who apparently looked a lot like him, had passed away that same night. We all thought I had seen the ghost of my dad's cousin. The thing is, I don't know this cousin of his. I never met him, never knew about him, I haven't even seen pictures of him. As I grew older, I started to think that this whole experience was a false memory, until one day I bring it up with my dad and sister, and they both remember the same thing. They remember me asking my dad why he came into my room, and his cousin passing away that same night. It was my girlfriend's birthday the following day, and I was going to get her a gift. As I'm leaving my house, I start to feel super woozy and lightheaded, but I think, it's her birthday, I have to get her a gift. I hop in my car and leave my house. When I stopped at the intersection on a red light, I think I fainted. I was on the road, like lying down, and I start to feel like I'm floating. When I look down from the sky, I see my car, and a random car flipped and completely totaled with parts all over the road. I see my body on the road without an arm. I wake back up, and it's the same exact time, and I am in the same exact spot. I am scared to death, and I don't feel lightheaded anymore. I have a terrible feeling in my gut, so I turn back to my house. I see later on the news, 30 minutes after I left the intersection to turn back around, there was a fatal crash killing 2. That would have been the exact time I would have been back from the store. It was also in the exact same intersection I was in when I had that vision. I still think about it to this day. I got her gift after the crash had been cleared. Now, I've brought this up before, but something that's completely fascinated me since starting these videos is the patterns and similarities I've seen between stories. One popular one is these sort of abrupt visions that people get of a terrible event that's about to happen. And a lot of the times it's a car accident just like this one. People seem to have a sort of out-of-body experience where they're kind of floating above the accident and they can see everything that's happening, and then bam, they're right back right before it happens. Pretty much this exact same story has been sent to me like countless times now. This is kind of weird, for me at least. It just got me thinking recently. I traveled to attend a forum for a week. It was a stay-in forum with other representatives from my district, and with me is my, let's say, apprentice. It was a 6-hour flight. We landed and we went straight to the venue and hotel. After a day on the forum, me and my apprentice went snooping around, more of a get-to-know-the-place type of thing, and I see a board of members posted on the wall. I saw someone familiar, and it was me. Face, name, including middle initial. I've never been in that place, and me and my apprentice found it funny, so we took pictures and sent it to my wife. My wife then sent it to my family, and we all had a good laugh at it. Didn't think of it much then. Later, a week or 2 had passed. I thought it would be a great icebreaker to talk about in the office, so I grabbed my phone to show it to my coworkers, and weirdly, all the photos I took of him are gone. I even called my apprentice, and he had no recollection of what had happened. Even my wife and family don't remember a thing. I tried looking for the photo in the cloud, but it's gone. I don't know, just want to share this here. Just find it weird because I clearly remember this happening. I'll look for it if I have another chance to go there. When I was around 8 or 9, I lived with my mom, sister, and extended family in a city I no longer live in. For some background context, my abuelo, my mom's dad, didn't live with us. When his kids became adults, he decided to move back to Michoacan, but he would always come back and visit us in the US during holidays. My grandpa had been in the US for about a week, and my mom wanted to take him out to eat before his flight. My sister, mom, and I were waiting in the car when she asked me to go and tell him that we were ready. I started walking to my room when I realized that I heard water running under the tap and the tapping of a razor on the sink. When I peeked inside of the bathroom, I saw him leaning over the sink and looking into the mirror. He wasn't facing me, so all I saw was the back of him. "Grandpa, we're ready." He didn't pause what he was doing, but I heard his voice come from inside my room. "Okay, I'm coming." Puzzled, I turned and walked to my room. There he was, sitting on my bed, putting on his boots. I looked back into the bathroom. The water was no longer running, no sign that anyone had been in there. I remember telling my mom about this story shortly after it occurred, and she told me what she knew of doppelgängers. Supposedly, doppelgängers are a message of death or illness, and whoever they appear as is in danger of bad health. A few months after my grandpa had left, we had the dilemma of his high blood pressure. His children had to force him to go seek medical attention, and luckily, he's still alive today. To this day, I think the figure in the bathroom was a warning to my family about my grandfather's poor health. So this happened when I was between 8 or 10, so it was quite a while ago, and my memory is a little foggy. I would also like to state that things like this have happened to me before, but not to this extent. I had this dream where I was younger, around 6, with my family and friends at my house. And we were all doing activities, which I sadly do not remember, but I believe we were mostly just talking. This entire time, however, there was this little girl, around 6, the same age as me in the dream, who looked weirdly familiar, even though I have no recollection of seeing her in my entire life. When it was nighttime, we started to watch a movie, and me and the little girl sat next to each other. For some reason, everyone was gone, and it was only me and the girl. We started talking, but sadly, I forgot what we were saying. I woke up, thinking nothing of it, and started to get ready for school. At my old elementary school, we went to the park every Tuesday and Thursday, and it was one of those days. We arrived at the park, and it was normal. I was talking to my friends, and I was having fun. Then, I wandered off from the group. I assumed to go to the water fountain or something, and that's when I saw something that made the hair on my neck stand up. The same girl from my dream walking towards me. She stopped in front of me and said one phrase, "I like your hair." I was just standing there, utterly terrified, until I forced a measly "thanks" out of my lips, and she walked away. I rushed back to tell my friends, and they didn't believe me, which I don't blame them for. When I got back home, I told my mom, and I'm pretty sure she believed me, as she was as creeped out as I was.